Batman Urban Legends issue 8.
There you go.
So none of us read issue 7 because it was just the future state batch of stories, and it was just kind of it came in a busy week, and it was like, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
Whereas this has 2 tie-ins to Fear State, hence the banner. So I'll talk about that as we get to them. The first story in this, as per usual, it's 4 stories. The first and the last are full 20-page stories. The middle 2 are about 10-ish each. So the first one's a Batwoman story. It's part 1 of 2 by Alyssa Wong, writing, and Vasco Georgiev on the art.
Georgiev. And I know that
okay, there you go.
from hockey.
I'll tell you
the
what
tender
for
the New York Rangers. His last name is Georgiev, or Georgiev, however you want to pronounce it. But yeah, you're close though.
Okay, yeah, I'll go with it. So this turned out to be one of the Fear State tie-ins, and I'll be honest, the Fear State tie-in nature of this I thought was a little bit weak sauce. I didn't even realize it was one of the tie-in stories until it got to a certain point where Cass mentioned that Oracle, there was a fake Oracle saying things, and I was like, oh, I guess this is a Fear State tie-in.
So I did read this one. I had time to read this one, and yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna be mad at more Kate because I've been missing her, and of course her with Cass. I love that. We didn't get a lot of them in Tynan's tech run, but when we did, when they were sharing a panel, it was good. They always seem to be off doing separate stuff for that team. So that's why I wanted to read this. And, as a Kate Kane story, it's pretty good. As a Fear State tie-in, like you said, it's real weak.
Yeah, it's a bit odd in that sense. There's an imposter Cassandra Cain Batgirl running around killing people,
yeah.
And that's kind of what the plot of this is. And it turns out to be this, not the fake Oracle per se, but another like hacker person who like sort of talks to them eventually. But Kate finds Cass, and they're together, and it kind of gets the plot going. The other big part of this is that Alice, but not Alice. She's not Alice anymore.
No, it's the sister. Is it Betty?
Yeah, Betty.
Elizabeth.
Yeah, Betty.
Yeah.
She's like dealing with the fact that she's sort of gotten over her Alice thing, but she still lives with it though. She still sort of sees Alice in the reflection sometimes. She has a freak out moment, that kind of thing. The big crux of the issue for her is that at the end of the story, it's like they need to track down whoever's behind this fake Cass murdering stuff is. So she's like, hey, like we've got some resources here that we can pull upon. I mean, I don't have contacts, but Alice. So Alice has contacts. So it looks like the second part of this is going to be either her letting Alice out or pretending to be Alice to make use of the criminal underworld contacts that Alice has, which is okay. It's one of those things where I'm glad that at least it's in a different place, because I got so sick of everything being about Alice when I was reading Batwoman before in the last Batwoman Soul series. When the twist happened like halfway through that book that Alice was involved, that was when I completely lost interest. Yeah, because it's always what our book's been about, and it just feels like move on.
It's time to move on. There's better stories in there.
Betty being back to being Betty though, but sort of dealing with her inner Alice, but mostly being a good character, is definitely a new status quo, so it is therefore more interesting.
Yeah. Well, I like how we only see Alice through the looking glass, and that's such a good.
Oh sure, but I have to admit though, I did kind of feel a bit of a see when she first saw Alice in the reflection of the water or tea or whatever it is. I did kind of have a moment of like, oh god, are we doing this?
There was a better way to do it, and they did it where she's trying to put the makeup on. And Cass busts through, and it leads her to hit her eye, and her makeup ends up becoming like her Alice makeup. And I thought that was way more effective. That stood out more than looking into the reflection. But at the end there, where she talks about letting Alice out or whatever, and it's through that little makeup mirror, that was a nice touch. I like that because it plays on the whole Alice in Wonderland, Alice through the looking glass. So
yeah. I think the art is a bit hit and miss. The faces, in particular, Montoya shows up at one point and kind of has a bit of a fight with Kate about, looking for Cass and whatnot. I thought a lot of the facials on the characters were a little bit off or over exaggerated. There's some really pouty lips at a couple of points. Just stuff that doesn't look that great. Once they're in the costume, I think Cassandra Cain, when she's in costume, because they don't have to draw the face, I think a lot of artists get an easy time with her and can still have her look really good, and I think that's true here as well. I think when we see her in the alleyway fighting some magistrate drones, she looks great. And then Kate shows up and they have a bit of a team up. But once we get our mask off again, all of a sudden all the critiques I was having with the art kind of started to bleed back into it, which is a shame. So yeah, what was the name of this villain again? I forgot who it was. Seer, that's who it was. I knew it was a stupid name. Yeah. So Seer starts talking to them through a bunch of TVs, and the Oracle comms channel, whatever it is, and they're like, shit, we have to go and deal with something. Betty is attacked by magistrate drones, but Alice took over and stabbed the shit out of them. But this is basically the end of the story, where they're talking about what to do next, and she's like, hey, Alice has got contacts, so let's do that. Yeah. It's okay. I wasn't in love with it. I think its Fear State tie-in nature is kind of lame. It feels like the story didn't need to be tied into Fear State. They've just kind of worked a little bit of magistrate into it just so that it can be tied into Fear State. But the actual story of someone like having this fake cast murdering people in a video and leaking that out, that could just be a standalone story. There's nothing about it that needs to be connected to Fear State.
Nope.
Betty pretending to be Alice or having to call upon Alice's connections is a little bit interesting, so I'll see what they do with that in the second part. But the art was very iffy on the faces, so I wasn't necessarily enjoying the art in this one. So I'm a bit lukewarm on it overall. Well, you read this one. Do you want to read it?
Yeah, I'll read it. This is 6.5. Like you said, the art was real hit or miss, and the story doesn't do anything new. But when it does hit, stuff really resonated. But yeah, kind of disappointed. But yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll probably give it like probably like a 6. Yeah, it's not bad, but I wouldn't like go out my way for it. The next story is a story about Batman looking for a kidnapped child who's been taken by Professor Pig, who's going to turn her into one of his dolls. But it's all framed around the three piggies, right, in their houses, and the big bad wolf. I always get this fairy tale mixed up with the Red Riding Hood and the Red Riding Hood. Like I always mix up my wolf stories.
Gotcha. Red Riding Hood has him becoming grandma.
Yes,
Three Little Pigs has him huffing and puffing to blow the house down.
Yes, but it's all framed around Three Little Pigs, and it's him going to various villains to get information. He goes to Penguin, he goes to, funnily enough, the ventriloquist and Scarface, and he gets information of 3 locations. And the first one, he goes in and beats everyone up, and that's like that's the Straw House. And then he goes to the one made of sticks, and he beats everyone up there. And basically, it's flashing back to Thomas like reading young Bruce this story as a kid. And when he gets to the final location where Professor Pig actually is with the kid, and he's about to do the surgery, his art, as he calls it, it's that part in the story where, when Bruce is hearing this as a kid, he's told that the wolf can't get in because it's the brick house or the stone house. So he tries to go down the chimney, but he ends up getting into the boiling water and dying. And all the pigs have him for stew. So when he gets to that part, he's like, that's stupid. The wolf is stupid. I would be more prepared. So in the main part of the story, his bat tank like goes through the wall and gets into the I guess like an old factory or something that pigs taken over, maybe an old abattoir. And he saves the kid, and the story ends with him just he gets out of the bat tank and says little pig, end of story. It's okay. This is like this is the sort of thing where if you threw this into one of those 80-page, 100-page specials, and this was like an 8 or 10-page story, and I'd be like, okay, that was a neat little idea for a short. As you frame it around 3 little pigs, and you have Batman looking for Professor Pig in the context of that. Okay,
seems more coherent than the story that King wanted to tell that Bruce apparently loved as a kid.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So yeah.
Because part of me was thinking, okay, I get that we're after Professor Pig, but how does this tie in? But then there's like, oh, he's got 3 locations and he's going to go through them one by one. Okay, all right, very good. Yeah, it's all right. It is kind of funny though to like take a story like that and take the villain and be like, No. He's the one that Batman's going to go. No. I'm doing this job. I would do it better. I'll get in. Right. I'll get into that brick house. Don't you worry. Just take
that wolf's dumb.
Yeah, just take some heavy machinery. That's all it takes.
Yeah.
Stupid wolf. So it's okay. Yes. I mean, I wouldn't rate it too highly. The art is more stylized than the previous story, and I think that's okay. It's more stylized. It's obviously, I can't remember the art stuff on my head now that I'm not on the page, but
it's Christian Ward did the art and the
story. That's right.
Story.
I would describe his art as almost a little Carmine DJ Domenico-esque.
Okay.
It's got a little bit of that vibe. But yeah, the art's not bad. It's definitely stylized. Not something that I'd want in every type of comic by any means, but I think it fits here well, especially since it's going with the fairy tale vibe. So yeah, I'll stretch this out to a 7, I think, for this one. So that's cool. Next story was an Azrael story. With him going after a villain called Bullet Tooth, but Bullet Tooth commits suicide by setting off an explosion. And then we see some of Azrael, Jean-Paul, at like the hospice where he's volunteering. He's trying to give this guy who's dying a pep talk and whatever. Batman comes to see him though that night because he's like, hey, there's some bodies from an incident. And Jean-Paul's like, that's not me. The guy blew the place up himself. That's not on me. But he makes it very clear that he doesn't want him to be killing anyone. Accuses him of also being involved in some guy got like killed with a big axe, and he's like, I don't use an axe. I use a flaming sword. That's not axes aren't my thing. So yeah, and then the end of the story is that Bullet Tooth gets up out of the morgue and walks out. And a big theme of this story, like throughout, is the idea that death has no jurisdiction in Gotham. That phrase is repeated a couple of times. Yeah. It does point out at the end of this that, as an editor's note saying, this story takes place before the events of Arkham City issue 1, which I thought was an interesting thing for it to point out. So that was it. I the art was actually, now the art, like, I thought the art was a bit. It was stylized in a way that it looked a bit Cartoon Network to me. It had the thin Johnny Bravo legs, and there was and there was sort of a lack of detail in the faces that it was going for, which was definitely a stylistic choice. It wasn't just like a laziness thing, but I don't know if I was that into it, I will say. And the story's part 1 of I don't know, have maybe 1 of 3 or something like that. I can't remember what it said at the start, but it was kind of okay. Like, it's like I'm not a big Azrael guy, if I'm honest, so I'm not necessarily like jonesing for an Azrael story at the best of times. So, it's okay. I'd say the sequentials in the art, motion wise, are all right. There's a nice kind of flow to it, but I don't like the actual body and face style of the art that much. So, I'll probably give this like a 6 as well at the Batwoman story, I think. Yeah, not bad, but not necessarily setting the world on fire either. And then the final story. Now this is interesting because I felt lied to when I started this. You start this final story, and it says future state, and then in brackets plus 30 years, right? So it's saying it's future state 30 years from now. That's what it's saying. And I thought, wait a minute, I thought I was getting a future state tie-in. What is this nonsense?
Yeah.
Right? No, don't react too soon, because this actually goes interesting places. So you've got, like, not old man Duke, he's not ancient, but like, middle-aged Duke. And he's riding a beast that turns out to be what's his name?
The Metamorpho.
No. Tickle. Okay.
Oh, from the Clarion and Witch Boy.
So he's riding Tickle, and Jefferson, as we know from Future State, is just like lightning now. He's just like the embodiment of lightning, and he's tied to the sword. Basically, they're like making a last stand against this villain who we don't really know yet, who's got a big cloak on. He's coming for them, and they're racing to this location to use some magic, and Duke jumps through a portal, and then he goes back in time. This is a Fear State tie-in, because it goes back in time to present day, I like this. I appreciated this. It swerved me into being mad at first because I was like, wait, this is a future state story. Why am I getting this? And then it goes back in time. There's like a 2-page layout showing you like sort of like, okay, this is Fear State 24 years from now. This is Fear State in 18 years. This is Fear State in 6 years, 2 years. And then it's like, okay, now he lands in Gotham. It's the only chance they've got to save in the future. And Batman would do anything it takes to save the future, so they're going to as well. So Jefferson and Duke arrive, sorry, Duke doesn't even come back in time. Sorry, he just sends Jefferson, who's like living Lightning, back. Right, so this is the full Lightning version of Jefferson who gets sent back in time. Duke himself doesn't come. I misspoke there when I said that. So he kind of, even like a little, almost a reference to the Terminator. When he sort of like lands on the ground, he lands with his fist down and he's like on his knee. It's very Terminator-esque, the pose. But he asked some guys for, what was the last big thing that happened in Gotham, and they're like, I don't know, the Joker War, I guess. Was that the last big thing that happened? Like, okay, he's like, shit, I'm about a week or two later than I was expecting to be. So he finds where the Outsiders are at this time, which they were basically fighting this underground Mortal Kombat style tournament against monsters. To stop them from taking over the surface world. Really random, but it's one of those weird things where you just put it in as like almost like a joke that this was going on. And this is what they were doing, and they were working with Frankenstein to do this. It's just a neat little aside. But Metamorpho's there, Katana's there. Yeah, it's the Outsiders, right? And they talk about how in between books they've been working as a team where they swap in a fifth member. In this case, it's Frankenstein, but whoever's got like a job for them will be the fifth member. But then those 4 are the main Outsiders team. But future Jefferson, all Lightning Jefferson, shows up. Present day Jefferson's like recognizes enough on him. He's like, "Hey, your energy signatures are me. You're me. Are you from like another world? Where you from?" He's like, "No, I'm here from the future." Duke becomes one of the world's greatest. What was the word he used? Sorcerers? Not sorcerer. Mages. That was the word. Mages. Because he's got a demon arm in the future. You see, he becomes a mage.
Okay.
So he sent me back through time because there's a guy in Gotham who's going to become this villain. What was his name? Jonah Winfield, who was one of the students of Jonathan Crane, and Jonathan Crane drove him mad. And this was years ago when he was a student.
Right.
And he left Gotham, but he came back to try and counter his fear. But little did he know that when Jonathan Crane did an attack on like a subway station recently with a fear toxin, he was infected with fear toxin for the second time. But because he'd already been exposed, his antibodies were different than everyone else's, and it kind of like grew and became this worse thing where he could basically spread fear in people, basically airborne. Which maybe this is a very topical thing because it's kind of pandemic-esque.
Yeah,
this idea.
I mean, it fits in, and this is Brandon Thomas, right?
Yeah.
That checks out with him.
So we get this set up, and I'm like, you know what? Is this how they're going to like kind of like write Fear State out? Is they're actually going to do like a Terminator-esque plot where they actually stop it from happening by having Lightning Jefferson come from the future and helping the Outsiders stop it from ever going down that path? Like this one domino is the one thing that's going to stop the Fear State that we saw in Gotham from actually happening. That's actually if that's what this is genius. This is a genius way of doing it. I legit got excited with the premise here. So they go and find this guy who's starting to be kind of monstrous. He's got a cloak on, and they're like, "Hey, we're trying to help you. We're going to try and stop this." But when the guy like attacks them, they all start seeing their own fears. There's a full page spread where in the reflections you see them all sort of facing their worst nightmares, various villains and whatnot. And then the end of the issue is that Tim shows up and announces himself as Red Robin, which I thought was interesting because he's not been called Red Robin in a while, but sure.
No, I mean, but they also got rid of Drake in his GPS uniform.
That's true. So,
yeah.
But so Tim shows up at the end to help, and that's kind of the cliffhanger. And it's funny though, because one of them actually yells out, "The Joker's getting away," but it's only because one of them saw this bad guy as the Joker, because he's the Joker's his
Joker got
fear.
away.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. So, easily this was the standout story of the book.
Sounds like it. Yeah, Duke riding Tickle with a demon arm.
To sum this up, this is an outsider story, and we've typically enjoyed most versions of the Outsiders ever since they came back in that book, right? And the little glimpses we've seen in future state of them and whatnot. It's an outsider story where lightning future Jefferson goes back in time to help the current present day outsiders try and stop this character who is going to spread fear to the point where future state in Gotham is going to happen. If this may end up being such an important story, at least in the sense that at least if you care about why didn't everything happen, this might be important to that. But at the very least, so far it's fun. The art is the art's not amazing. It's very house style. It's very serviceable.
Okay.
There's not a great necessarily tone to it or anything like that. But it's not bad by any means either. There's the odd wonky face or whatever. But for the most part, it's just kind of typical. Some pages are better than others, and it's all I can really say about it. Which isn't, I know it's not like a glaring thing. But I'd probably go as far and give this a nice 7.5. I think the story concept is super fun. I love being mad for a couple of pages before I realised, oh wait, this is a Fear State tie-in. It's just going about it in a really interesting angle.
You sound like me in therapy. Yeah, no, but I like being mad.
I like being mad when it's almost designed to give me the catharsis of oh no, I was worried for nothing a couple of pages later. That's just good storytelling. So art's a bit ho-hum, but I would say the premise is fun, and I'm kind of intrigued by what this is going to do. So this is part 1 of 3, I think. So they've got me for this story, at least in Urban Legends, for the next couple of issues, because I damn well want to see the rest of this now. Which is annoying, because the rest of the stories didn't wow me that much, so I could have very easily just said, I'll just sit out from Urban Legends now. But then you get to this last story, and I'm like, oh, damn it, this is actually quite interesting. You son of a bitch.
That's funny.
Son of a bitch. So yeah, 7.5 on that one for me. If the art was better, I would have probably comfortably scraped that 8, but it didn't, so that's where it'll sit.